Now, the texture of your book are the elements that give it life. The texture can include things like action, thought, dialogue versus description, and much more. Well, I'm Michael with Writer Sanctuary, and in week 7 of the Reedsy Master Class of How to Write a Novel, we covered the various parts of what texture is and how to implement it in your book. Now, on day 1, we learned about adding action to the story. Now, action can offer movement, including tactile senses, and often sets the pacing for the novel. But action doesn't always refer to fights, car chases, or shootouts. It could be simple things that add meat to a story. Now, action is all about setting up the details and specifics of a scene. Imagine breaking something down in slow motion and being straightforward. Now, when it comes to action, verbs play an important role and is often void of things like flashbacks or thinking pauses. Those elements tend to slow down the pace of a book. So, to sum it up, action is about movement of any kind and is especially effective when you think about showing things in slow motion. Now, on day 2, we focused on thought and exposition. Now, moments of thought and exposition allow readers to fill in the blanks, so to speak. Remember, you can't describe everything. Exposition is more about dropping bits of information in more of a summarized layout and moving the reader along to the moments that matter most. Thoughts of a character are important to enrich the scene itself and are not the same as feelings. Now, an effective way to write is to mix thought with description in a balanced way. On day 3, Tom Bromley explained more about dialogue versus description. Now, when it comes to pacing, varied textures make for a varied read while affecting the pace. For instance, dialogue is more of an acceleration in terms of pacing as the flow of the story moves much faster along. In contrast, descriptions are more of the breaks that slow down the story quite a bit. Now, on a side note, thought, exposition, and action have more of a neutral ground. Now, offering a variety of these elements creates a bit of a contrast for both texture and pace. You don't want the book to continuously travel at warp 9, but you don't want the entire thing to crawl to a snail's pace. Now, when it comes to dialogues and description, think of it like this. The longer your sentences and paragraphs, the slower the pace, and vice versa. On day 4 was about dialogue, description, and pacing. That's unusual for an entire scene in a book to be fast or slow paced, as most will have a combination of textures. And when you change the texture of what you're writing, you're changing the pace. Now, according to Tom Bromley, a varied reading experience is good, so you'll want to vary those elements throughout the page or scene. Now, varying the pace with dialogue and description in a nutshell usually provides a more rewarding experience to the reader. On day 5, we learned more about mixing things together of all the textures. Now, when you use action and dialogue together, readers usually respond well. And mixing action and description may require more balance between the two to keep the story moving along. Then there are examples of mixing action, dialogue, description, and thought that work exceptionally well when balanced throughout the scene. Now remember, variety is a sign of good writing and avoids coming off as robotic and bland. Now, Saturday's interviews centered more on inspiration. It was interesting to hear how other authors were inspired to write, most of whom came from varied backgrounds. I was one of those kids who loved writing from a very young age. Unfortunately, I didn't do much with it until I was about 45. And I've been kicking myself in the ass ever since. We all have our origin stories, and while there may be some similarities in how we start, the progression is often significantly different. For me, it was more of an intense lack of faith in myself and what I was doing. Part of that stemmed from a few comments from when I was much younger. Today, I just don't give a shit and plan on going the distance regardless of what others think. All in all, it was a very interesting week, and I learned a lot of things that I really didn't take into consideration before. I don't think I do too bad of pacing the story, but I know that I often skip out on some details while overloading others. In other words, I need to create better balance throughout the story. Next week, we'll be looking at the midpoint of the story and discussing moving from the first to the second part of the book. After week 7 of the Reedsy writing course, I am gaining far more confidence in how my future books are going to turn out. Let's just hope my readers feel the same way. So if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. For more videos about self-publishing, freelance writing, blogging, or anything else I cover, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. I think that's going to do it for me today. I got a lot of catch up to do. I'll see you next time.